So today I'll be showing you all how to make these Mardi Gras themed pants. I already have made the first leg, so I'll be showing you how I make that leg, and they're both made the same, so you'll repeat that step twice. After that, you'll be increasing or decreasing depending on your waist size, and we'll be putting ribbing on the top and bottom of these pants. I'll be using Hobby Lobby's Yarn Bees Soft Secret Yarn in the colors Violet, Butter, and Lime. The yarn recommends using a 5mm hook. I personally use a 5.5mm hook just so that my pant leg will be a bit more flowy. If I was using a yarn that wasn't as soft and glides as well as this one, like many worsted 4-weight yarns, I would probably go up hook size even more than that, maybe a 6 or a 6.5, so that type of yarn will have the flow that it needs. But with this particular yarn that I'm using, a 5.5mm works pretty well. Other supplies you will need are your measuring tape, your darning needles, and your scissors. I will say with your darning needles, if you do not have them, a smaller hook will work just to help you pull those yarn ends through at the very end of our work. And please don't trip if you don't have needles, because I definitely misplaced mine somewhere through this project, and I just used a smaller hook and it worked out just fine. If you're making these pants for yourself, I recommend measuring your waist and your hips now so that you know where your measurements need to be. If these pants are being made for somebody else, I recommend you look up a sizing chart for a store that you enjoy and look up their pant sizes to know what inches you need around the waist and the widest portion of the hips for the person you're making these pants for. So I'm just cutting really quickly to the end of the project so you can see how much yarn I had left of each skein, which originally had 300 yards each. Of my purple, I would say I used about 200. Of the green, I say I used about 200 based on what's left. And I have 2 skeins of the yellow remaining in this picture. And I would say I used about 450 or so of that yellow. And that is for a size small or medium. So for any person using more than the amount of starter chains I'm using, I would say buy more yarn than 850 to 900 yards of yarn. If you are a size extra small, then you would need a little less than that. Also, for reference, I am 5'1", so if you are taller than me, you may want to use more yarn as well. And you can use any yarn you want of any weight class, but keep in mind, it will change the amount of starter chains you have. I just wanted to briefly show this yarn here. If you're using a yarn that looks like this, that is a weight 4 yarn that isn't as sleek as the one I'm using, I recommend even going up a hook size further than just a half size, a 6 or a 6.5 at least, if you want the drape that the yarn I'm using has. But keep in mind, you will have slightly bigger spacing between your stitches depending on your tension. I start by measuring the widest portion of my hips, which is 38 inches around. I divide that number by 2 to get 19 inches per leg. I want my pants to be able to stretch to 19 inches, not necessarily be resting in a 19-inch state. So what I do is I add about 4 to 5 inches on my starting chain to 19. So my starting chain is about 24 inches around. I'm adding those 4 or 5 extra inches because we do have a wave in this pattern. And before you start, I do want to jump really quickly to what I'm referring to. Here I have 24 inches around on my starting chain because half of it measures at 12. However, the top of my pant leg only measures at 20 inches around because I have 10 inches here for half of that leg. So I lose 4 inches around once the waves are added. With that in mind, if you're making a starting chain of 51, you want to be adding 3 inches extra to whatever your width is of your leg. If you're making a starting chain that's higher than mine in the multiples, so if you have 17 times 5, you'd be planning to add 5 extra inches. If you have 17 times 6, which is 102, you will want to be adding 6 extra inches because each wave takes away an inch off of your starting chain. And I hope that makes sense. If not, please reach out in the comments and I can further explain that to you. Here I'll be starting with my foundation single chain of 68 stitches. If you do not want to do that, you can use regular chains as well. I start by making a slip knot and then chaining 2. Now you want to insert your hook into that first chain that you made, ensuring that you have 2 legs of your chain to the left of your hook when you enter it in and 1 leg to the right. yarn over and pull up a loop. Now you have 2 loops on your hook. Next, you want to yarn over again and pull through the first of those 2 loops. Now with those last 2 loops remaining, yarn over once more and pull through those last 2 loops all together. Where my thumb is pointing is showing the bottom chain, and where my index finger is pointing is showing the top of the single crochet that you just made. I'll show you that again. So you insert your hook and make sure you have 2 legs laying on the left side of your hook once you do insert it. Yarn over, pull up a loop. You have 2 loops on your hook now. Yarn over, pull through that first loop. Yarn over once more and pull through those final 2 loops. The top of my singles are facing upward and the 2 chains are at the bottom side of my work. From this point, I will be repeating that step 32 more times, so I will have 34 in total. And on my 34th stitch is where I'll be changing over from the color green to the color yellow, and I'll be showing you how I do that. If you're not changing colors, just disregard that and continue to make as many foundation singles as you need for your multiple. So I'm just showing you how I'm making the rest of those 34 chains, and I'll be back on my 34th chain so I can show you how I change colors. And don't forget, if you ever need to speed up or slow down the video, go to the settings on the right hand bottom side of the screen, and you can alter the speed of the video all the way down to 0.25 times the speed or all the way up to 2 times the speed. So right now I have 30 stitches showing, and I'm going to be making my last 3 full stitches. And on the 34th one is where I'm changing colors. So right now I'm making my 31st foundation single crochet chain. This is the 32nd. This one is the 33rd. To start my 34th stitch, I'll be inserting my hook with 2 legs to the left as we've been doing. I yarn over and pull up a loop. I have 2 loops on my hook. I begin the first part of my single by yarning over again and pulling through that first loop. And now I will drop the green yarn and pick up the yellow. I yarn over once with the yellow and pull through both loops to finish off that single crochet stitch. I hold the working yarn, which is the yarn still in use with that green, and I hold the very tail end of the yellow in my left hand as I continue on. I continue on by inserting my hook into that last chain I made, and I yarn over, making sure to pull up the yellow this time. I yarn over and pull through that first loop, yarn over and pull through both loops as normal, and now I just tug down a bit on the end of that yellow strand and on the working yarn in green to ensure that my stitches are aligned. And now I'll just be continuing on like I have been doing, making my remaining 34 stitches in yellow, and I'll show you how to complete your last stitch, which is stitch number 68 for me, and I'll show you how to join to the beginning of your round. So right here I have 64 stitches total, and I'm just doing like I did last time and showing my final 4 stitches on camera. So here I am doing stitch number 65. This is stitch number 66. Number 67. To start my last stitch, I'll be inserting my hook, yarning over, and pulling up a loop. Now I'll be going to grab the beginning of this foundation single chain, and now I'm just pulling down the line to make sure that the chain is straight before I connect to my other side. It's important to make sure that your chain is not twisted before you continue on. I see that my chain is straight, so I'm just bringing my left hand underneath and looping around. You want to make sure you're putting your hook in that very last space right next to your slip stitch. Make sure you have 2 loops underneath your hook. pull the green end from the very beginning in front of you. We'll be securing that in later. Yarn over with your yellow and pull through that green loop there and the first yellow loop. And yarn over once more with the yellow and pull through both loops. I've completed my first 68 stitches, and I'll be slip stitching to that first loop that I'm pointing at. With a normal slip stitch, you insert your hook like I'm showing you now under those top 2 loops of your single, and you pull that yarn through. But I don't prefer that method because it leaves that extra loop at the top that I'm pointing at. So for the entirety of the project, I'll be slip stitching by raising the loop after I complete my last stitch of the row, and I insert my hook from back to front under that first single there that I'm showing. And I'm grabbing the yarn and pulling it from the front to the back of my work. This just gives a more clean look. And after I pull that loop through, I'll be turning my work. So I keep my yellow yarn in use because I'll be working into the yellow stitches again. When slip stitching this way, I like to make sure that the working yarn, which is the yarn that's attached to the ball, is pulling from the front of my work. And just now it was pulling from the back of my hook rather than the front, which is why I reinserted my hook that way. And now I'll be chaining 1 to start my next row. I do my chain 1 kind of tight so you can see on this front side now that the extra loop that was there with the original kind of slip stitch I was using is no longer there because I brought my yarn from front to back. And if these pants are for you, I do recommend pulling that loop up really high so that it won't come out, and trying this band on the widest part of your thigh, making sure that you have the appropriate number of inches remaining. Again, if your multiple is of 3 and you have 51 stitches, make sure you have at least 3 inches remaining. If you're doing like me and you have 68 chains around, make sure you have 4 inches remaining, so forth and so on, so that you don't continue to make rows and find out that your pants won't fit you. So after you have tried that band on your leg, if these are for you, we've already chained 1, so bring that loop back down, and we'll be starting with a stacked double. And I do that by inserting my hook, yarning over, pulling up a loop, yarning over, pulling through 2 loops to make a single. So right now I just want to show you really quickly what a normal stacked double looks like. You normally insert your hook under the first loop only, yarn over and pull up a loop, and yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And to me, it just looks a little bit bigger than a normal double crochet stitch. And I'm doing a normal double crochet next to this to show you what I mean. The base of that stitch is just slightly bigger, and I don't like it. So I'll show you what I'll be doing instead every time I do a stacked double in the video. And so right now I have my single as I started with. This is how you begin a stacked double. And instead of inserting through that first loop only, I'll be inserting through the 2 legs that are on the left side of my hook now. And I have 1 leg to the right. I yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And this is just a matter of preference. You can do whichever version of a stacked double you prefer. So I'm starting in the middle of the top of a wave. Waves normally have 6 increases across. Because I'm starting in the middle of my wave, I will have half of that, which is 3 increases across. And I begin my yarning over and inserting my hook out of the same stitch that my stacked double just came out of. I yarn over, pull up a loop. I yarn over, pull through those first 2 loops to begin my double. Yarn over again and complete the last, or go through the last 2 loops, and now you have 2 doubles coming out of 1 stitch. And you'll be doing that 2 more times. So the stacked double only starts at the beginning of the round. Every other time we do a double in the rest of the row, we'll be using regular doubles. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over again and pull through those last 2. And because we're still increasing, we're going to yarn over again and insert the hook into the same stitch that the last double just came out of. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Yarn over, pull through your first 2 loops. Yarn over again and pull through those last 2. And now we're going to do our last increase for this portion of the wave. And remember, we're only doing 3 sets of increases right here because we're only doing half of the wave since we started in the middle of it. You should now have 6 doubles here, the first one being a stacked double and the remaining 5 being normal doubles. To make the lower portion of the wave, you'll be skipping the stitch directly next to the increase and making a double into that second stitch. Hopefully you can see that first space that I skipped. I skipped the space that was right next to the last set of increases that we just did. We're going to be repeating that a few more times here. So we're going to skip the stitch that follows the double we just did and insert a double into that following stitch after. I'll be skipping the next stitch and inserting a double into the following stitch. We now just made the very middle of the bottom of the wave. Hopefully you can see that. And again, we'll be skipping a stitch and placing a double into that second stitch there. Now we're skipping the next stitch and placing a double in again. So you should now have 5 doubles, all separated with 1 stitch in between each of the doubles there. Now we're ready to start our increases again. I skipped the next stitch. I've already yarned over, and I'm inserting my hook into that second stitch and making my first double. I'm putting my second double into that same space to do the first of the 6 increases that are coming up. Oh, look at me struggling. So for the increases, we are not skipping any spaces in between. So into the very next stitch, you place your first double. Into that same stitch, place your second double. Now you've done 2 of 6 increases. We're doing our third one by placing 2 doubles into that third stitch. And this is how we should be looking at this point. Technically, we have 1 full wave completed with 3 sets of increases at the very beginning of the row and 3 sets of increases that we just completed. So everything we did here is what we will be repeating over this round. We'll be placing 2 doubles into each of the next 3 stitches. After that, we'll be skipping a space and placing a double into our second stitch 5 separate times. And then we skip a stitch again. And from that point on, we're going to do 3 more sets of increases with 2 doubles into each of those next 3 stitches all the way through until the very end of the round. But before we get to the end of the round, we do have to switch colors, and I'll be showing you how I do that when I switch from yellow to green as I complete my second wave off camera. Now I'm approaching the very end of my second wave. I just want to show you what that was looking like for me. So I just finished doing my doubles with chains in between each one of them, or foundation singles if you did foundation singles like I did. And now you'll be doing 2 doubles into the first stitch after you've skipped one. Then I'll be doing 2 doubles into that next stitch for the increase. And the third stitch is where things will be slightly different. I'll be placing my first double as normal into the last yellow stitch. And then on my second double is where things will be changing. I yarn over, insert my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. I yarn over and pull through my first 2 loops. And after that, I will be dropping the yellow yarn to pick up my green yarn and complete that last double. Where I choose to drop the color I'm working on always depends on where the next color I'm picking up is coming from, whether it's coming from the back or front of the work. Because the green is coming from the front side of my work, I drop the yellow also on the front side. So now I yarn over with the green from the back to the front, and I just pull that green through those 2 yellow loops. And now you're ready to use the green to start your third wave by doing 3 sets of double crochet increases and continuing with the pattern as we've been following. This is what we have so far. And now I'll just be showing the start of the third wave which again is the same. And I'm putting 2 doubles into that first stitch. Now we're placing 2 doubles into the next stitch, then 2 more doubles into the stitch right after that, and continue with pattern as normal. And just make sure that you leave that yellow yarn in front of you. And I'll be back toward the end of this round. So no matter how many multiples you have, at this point you should have 4 stitches left. Make sure you skip that first one and place 2 doubles into the second stitch, 2 doubles into the third stitch, and then 2 doubles into that final stitch. So now I'm completing my last set of increases for this round. This is what the row should look like. And now I'm ready to slip stitch by raising up that loop and pulling it through by inserting my hook from the back to the front and bringing that loop through that way. After placing that loop on the hook and pulling it from the front to the back, I'll be turning my work and now working into the green stitches. And I make sure that my working yarn, which is the yarn directly connected to the ball or the skein of yarn that you're using, is being pulled from the front side of the hook rather than the portion of the loop on the back side of the hook. Now here I'll be chaining 1, and for this row I'll just be doing singles, 1 single per stitch all the way across. So altogether I'll have 68 singles. And I'm just showing you the 2 loops that we're going in for each stitch. I'm just inserting my hook, yarning over and pulling up a loop, yarning over again and pulling through both loops. Repeating that again, I'm just inserting my hook under both of the loops, yarning over, pulling up that loop, yarning over again and pulling through both loops. That's my third one. And I'm doing that across each and every stitch of the entire round. And I'll meet back up with you at the color change so I can show you how I changed my color from green to yellow. Now I have 1 green single left to complete. I've inserted my hook, I've pulled up my loop, and right before I finish that single, I'll be dropping that green yarn. Because my yellow yarn is now behind the work, I will be dropping the green yarn behind my work as well and just picking the yellow one straight up. I wrap the yellow yarn around my hook from back to front, and I pull through those 2 green loops. I do tug on that green yarn just a bit so that the last single crochet I made is level with the rest of them there, and then I just continue on down the row, finishing my singles, and I'll be back at the end of this row. Now I'm completing my last single of the row. We do not change colors here. We only change colors once every round. So now what I'll be doing here is making the slip stitch that I've shown you before, where I pull up my loop, insert my hook under the first stitch of the round from the back to the front, place that loop on my hook, and drag it from the front to the back, chain 1 and turn, and we'll be beginning the next row. Now this round will be exactly the same as the last round we did with our doubles. The only difference is that we're now going into the top of a row of normal singles versus going into either a round of chains or a round of foundation single crochets, if that's what you chose to do. I'm starting the row again with my stacked double, which is made by placing a single crochet into that first stitch. And I'll be placing the single on top of that by putting in my hook where I have 2 legs of the last single to the left and 1 leg to the right. I yarn over and pull up a loop, and then I yarn over again and pull through both loops. Remember, this is in the middle of the increase of my first wave, so I'll be placing a normal double in the same stitch that the stacked double is in. After this, I'll be increasing twice more by putting 2 doubles into the second stitch. I'll be placing 2 doubles into the stitch right next to it. Then after that, you'll be skipping a space and placing a double 5 times. Skip a space again. And then you'll be starting your increases again by placing 2 doubles into each stitch 3 times. And that is the pattern, you guys. I'll be counting my foundation single crochet row as my row 1. My first row doubles will be my row 2. The last single row I just did is my row 3. And the row I'm on now with my doubles is my row 4. When I finish, I have about 2 or 3 inches of ankle space left because that's where I'll be doing my ribbing. And if for some reason you get tired of making all these doggone rows, you can just sit there and make shorts of any length. You can make a capri style pant, whatever suits you. And I'll be trying on my pants to show you exactly where it's falling on me before I begin making the upper portion of the pants. Keep note of however many rows you do use to make your first leg of the pant so you can replicate that when you do your second pant leg. On my last round, I make sure it's around where I was doing my doubles. That makes it much easier to join one leg to the next. And because I did use 2 skeins of my yellow yarn, I left all of my yarn attached so that I can pick it up easily when I'm connecting my legs. And honestly, it's just to avoid having all those ends at the very end of your work. If you're following my colors exactly, I use purple and yellow for one pant leg, and then green and yellow for the second pant leg. And shameless plug, y'all, I do love to sing and dance, hence the name The Crochet Melody. This is one of the reels I was making for Instagram as I was making this tutorial. And you can just follow me there if you want to hear me sing sometimes as I'm making things. You can see things I've previously made. And you also see some content for upcoming tutorials I'll have on YouTube as well. Call us by our names. Just a thing, and it goes on and on and on. So y'all, that was just a little sneak peek. Y'all go check me out at The Crochet Melody on Instagram, and I'm getting back to the tutorial now. So y'all, this is how you should be looking. Originally, I was going to have the yellow placed on the outside of the legs and the purple and green falling on the inside, which would have been cute on its own, but I chose to have the yellow at the back. That's why I love making the legs first, to be honest, sometimes when I make items, because then that way you have the ability to switch the legs around and do what you want without being tied to having the colors fall a certain way when you make it from the waist down. And when we join these pants, just make sure that you have 2 increased sections of both sides of your pants joining at the middle. And if you're using an odd number of waves, like if you have a multiple of 3, 5, 7, etc., the outside portion of your pant will be on the bottom of a wave rather than on an increased top portion of a wave like it's falling on me right now. Again, I hope all this is making sense, and please leave a comment if anything is confusing. And remember, too, all my yarn is still attached on both legs, and I'll be using that yarn as I continue around with my row of singles. I do have on wide leg pants beneath here, so you can't really see my ankles, but there's about 2 or 3 inches of space from the bottom of the pants and the end of my ankle, and that's where I'll be placing my ribbing at the very end. Remember, I did choose to have the purple and green facing the front, and so this is how the pants will be looking for the most part, and I'll be back to join the legs. And I usually pull my loop through high enough so that my yarn does not come undone the way it just did on that green side. So here I've just redone those last few stitches that came undone, and I'll be joining my right and left leg. I did flip my work, so the last row of doubles I made was facing me, and I made sure that both legs are that way. I feel like the ridges on this side are a bit more pronounced than on the opposite side where the single crochet rows are facing you. So I put those to face the inside, and now I have my doubles facing outside, or facing toward me. Normally I do join directly in the middle stitches of each leg, but because I do want a bit more spacing on my butt area, I'm not joining any portion of the yellow side at all. I'll be joining the front half portion of the wave on my green and purple sides. That join will be about 3 inches or so. And now I'm showing you the measurement of one side of the pant leg, which is 11 inches. So that means each leg around at this point before joining is 22 inches around, and 22 times 2 is 44 inches around. But because the crotch area for each of these pant legs will be taking away 3 inches each, we're taking away 6 total from 44, which leaves us with 38. And 38 was the original hip measurement I had for myself. So these pants will be fitting just right. So if you're using a similar weight yarn and hook, you'll also be taking away 6 inches from the total width of your 2 legs around. And don't be concerned if your number is coming up slightly lower than your hip circumference, because my pants here are not stretched. And if you take account the stretch that will happen, if your number is lower, your pants will still fit, and it should fit comfortably if it's just a couple inches or so less. So if I had come up with 36 inches after I took away the 6 from my crotch area, I would still continue, and my pants would also still be just fine. It doesn't matter at all really what color you choose to slip stitch with. I personally chose the green because I wanted to bring that green from the back of my work toward the front so that I can continue on without having to cut my yarn. And the green will be ready to use after I finish slip stitching this crotch area. And to start joining, I'll be slip stitching by placing my hook under the first 2 loops there that are green and the first 2 loops that are purple, which is it makes it easy to see because of the way I did my color changes. I yarn over and pull that loop through all 4 of those loops, the 2 green and the 2 purple, and I continue pulling that loop through the loop that was on my hook originally, and that's how you make the slip stitch. I'll be doing that again, placing my hook under the 2 green loops and the 2 purple loops of the second increases of the stitch. I pull through all 4 loops and pull through that final loop on my hook, and I'll be doing that again 6 more times, altogether 8 times. So I'm doing it across all 6 of the original increases from the row of doubles, and I'm doing it over the first and second doubles that were placed by themselves as the wave is moving downward. To try to avoid any confusion on joining, I'll just let this part of the video play where I join 8 times from one leg to the next, and I'll explain more once I finish doing those 8 slip stitches from one leg to the next. Now I'm placing my last slip stitch, and I'm just indicating where that will be. And that stitch I just pointed to is where I just came out of last. So as I'm making my final slip stitch, just make sure that you are lining up the 4th double on each side. I would not be slip stitching through that 3rd double that stands alone on either side. So that middle one of the bottom portion of each wave will not be slip stitched in, so that they will stand as 2 separate stitches as I continue on throughout my pattern on the front side. So this is what my slip stitching looks like on the inside of the pant leg. And this is what it looks like on the outside of the pant leg. Looks great to me. And from here, I'll just be pulling up my green loop so that it's available when I get to the green again. You technically can start there. I personally just chose to start on the front right side of my leg. So that's why I'm starting from the purple. And also be mindful that because our double crochet are facing outward, that when we do our single crochet, we should be facing, or should have the back of the work facing us. So those single crochets should be going in, and you should be looking at the back of your work as you're placing those single crochet. I'm placing 1 single crochet into each stitch, and I'll show you how I'll be changing color in the middle. So the purple and green middle stitches, which is that 3rd double from the last row, will be used as 2 separate stitches moving forward because I want the purple and green to remain separate and look the same. So what I'll be doing is in my last stitch of the purple side, which is that middle double from the previous row, I'll be placing a single. As I'm finishing that single with 2 loops on my hook, I will drop my yarn and then I will pick up the green and yarn over and pull through so that I can finish off the single on the purple side. And from that point forward, I'll be doing singles as normal on the green side all the way until I get to yellow, and I'll do my yarn change there as well. So I'm slightly out of frame here, but all I did was start my final single of the green by inserting my hook, yarning over and pulling up a loop, and I have 2 loops on my hook, and I drop the green yarn, and I pick up the yellow yarn, and yarn over and pull through with the yellow and those 2 green loops, and I continue on placing singles as normal on the yellow side. I'll be doing something slightly different from the purple and green side of my pants on the back where the whole entire back is yellow. So I'll show you what I'll be doing when I get to the middle of the 2 pant legs. So I just want to show you why when I get to the middle, I don't do 2 normal singles because you'll have that gap there where my finger is. So instead of doing 2 normal singles over those last 2 yellow spaces, I'll be yarning over, pulling up a loop in that last space on the right side of my leg, and then instead of yarning over and pulling through those 2 loops, I place my hook into the next yellow stitch and then yarn over and pull up a loop again. Now I have 3 loops on my hook. This is 2 single crochet together, and I yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. Now that the 2 single crochet on each side are joined together as one, I will continue on making 1 single for each stitch until I get to the very end of my row, which is where the yellow and the purple will be meeting. So now I'm at the end of my row here. What I'll be doing is placing my final single and completing it in yellow. And I will be turning my work as I've been doing by placing my hook from the back to the front to insert and get that yellow loop from the front to bring it to the back. And then I'll be chaining 1 and turning my work. So I have currently 7 waves right now because of the way I did my join in the middle. The second and third wave on the purple and green side are now 1 wave, if that makes any sense. So with 7 total, I will be changing the way I do my stitching on, starting from the back to the front on the second and third wave, which are the 2 middle waves of the butt side. And then on the front side, I will be changing that stitch as well, where the purple and green join at, just so that I don't have the same spacing as I've had on the rest of the waves. I don't want that type of openness to be there in the middle of my butt and on the front crotch area. So that's why I personally will be changing the way I do these stitches. So basically all of the waves that follow my hip area, like the 2 outer waves on the yellow sides, which are the first and fourth wave, and then on the front side, the 5th and 7th waves, which is the outer one on the green and the outer one on the purple, will all still remain open because I don't mind the spacing on my hips. If the current spacing in each of the waves is not an issue for you, you would just follow what I'm doing on the very first wave I do for the entirety of your waves. So this portion of events will be the same as normal for how I normally make my waves, by making my stack double first, placing 1 more double into that same stitch, placing 2 doubles into the second stitch, 2 doubles into the third stitch, and then skipping a space and placing a double. I repeat that section of skipping a space and placing a double 5 times. You skip 1 more space, and then you start your increase section by doing 2 doubles into that next stitch after skipping a space, 2 more doubles into that next stitch, and then 2 more doubles into the next stitch to make the top of your increase for the first wave. The increases remain the same on all of these waves, so I start my second wave as normal by doing 2 doubles into each of the next 3 stitches so that I can continue on with my increase. And I've already done that, so I'm ready to start doing my alternate wave here. I'm doing 2 double crochet together over those next 2 stitches. So in the very next stitch after the increase, I start doing a double, and instead of finishing through those last 2 loops there, I'll yarn over again as if I'm starting my second double, which I am, and placing the hook into that next stitch, yarning over, pulling up a loop. And to partially finish that second double, I'll yarn over and pull through those 2 loops there, and I'll have 3 loops remaining on my hook, and I'll yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops to complete 2 double crochet together. I'll be doing that same stitch again over the next 2 stitches. And I start by yarning over, inserting my hook, yarning over, pulling up a loop, yarn over, pull through those first 2 loops. Now you have your first partial double completed. And now you repeat that process again to the second stitch by yarning over, inserting your hook, yarning over and pulling up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops on your hook to partially complete your second double. And with 3 loops remaining on your hook, you yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. Now you've done your second 2 double crochet together of this wave. Now that we're coming toward the middle of the wave, we'll be doing 3 double crochet together instead of 2. So that's done exactly the same, except that there's a 3rd double at the very end. So you'll start by, in your very next stitch, placing your partially completed double. Continue and do that same thing into that very middle stitch of the previous round. And then, rather than yarning through and pulling through all 3 loops to make your 3rd double crochet partially, you'll do the same process that we've been doing. And then once you are completing that 3rd double by yarning over, inserting your hook, yarning over, pulling up a loop, and then yarning over and pulling through those first 2 loops, now you have 4 loops on your hook, and you'll yarn over and pull through all 4 of those loops. So to complete the wave, we have to continue doing what we did on the opposite side of the wave. So now that we've just completed the middle with the 3 double crochet together, we'll be doing 2 more sets of 2 double crochet together. And I'm just doing that a bit more quickly this time since we just finished doing those. You can rewind the video back or go into the settings of YouTube and slow down this portion of the video or any portion of the video if you want to see something done more slowly. So now we're approaching the top of our second wave. So in the middle of the single crocheting round on the last row on the back side, we did join 2 single crochet together into 1, only to avoid that spacing that happens when you don't join the crotch area in that way. So to get our count back to normal, for my increases here, I'll be placing 2 doubles into the next stitch as normal, 2 doubles into the stitch after that as normal. And now we'll be at the very middle stitch where the 2 single crochet joined into 1. And in that stitch, I will place 4 doubles instead of 2. And now that our stitch count is back to normal, I'll be on my 3rd wave, and I'll be doing 2 doubles into the next stitch and 2 doubles into that following stitch. And for this 3rd wave, I'll be repeating what I just did on the last one, since this also is another wave that meets toward the middle of my butt area. So we'll be doing the same steps by doing 2 double crochet together, doing my second set of 2 double crochet together over the next 2 stitches. In the middle, we'll be placing our 3 double crochet together, and then we'll be doing 2 sets of 2 double crochet together following that. And then our increase between the 3rd and 4th waves will be as normal. So we'll be placing 2 doubles into 1 stitch over the next 6 stitches. So the next 2 waves will be completed as we've been doing before this round. So after our 6 increases, we'll be skipping a space, placing a double, and repeating that section 5 times. And then after we skip our next space, we'll be doing our 2 double crochet into each of those next 6 stitches to begin that increase between our 4th and 5th wave, remembering to change color on the very middle of that increase section as we've normally been doing. And then after we've completed those 6 increase sections for the 4th and 5th wave, we'll be doing our normal stitching, which is skipping a space and placing a double, repeated 5 times over the middle, and then doing our increases between the 5th and 6th wave. And I'll show you what I'll be doing there as we approach the middle portion of the front of the crotch where the green and purple change colors. So I did my increase section already to begin my 6th wave with 2 double crochet into each of those 3 stitches. I will be doing 2 double crochet togethers here because I do want the crotch section to be more closed. So I would be doing 2 sets of 2 double crochet over those next 4 stitches. Remember a couple rounds ago I did choose to keep in that middle double crochet on the green side and the purple side. So because there is that extra stitching here, I'll be doing 2 double crochets together all the way through instead of doing a 3 double crochet in the middle like I did on the 2 ways on the back middle of the butt. So here, to complete the very end of the green side, I'll be doing 2 double crochet together, and When I get to the very end of that and there's 3 loops remaining on my hook, I will drop my yarn and change my yarn to purple. And I'll be yarning over and pulling through those 3 green loops with my purple yarn. Now I'll be doing those same last steps on the purple side as well. So I'll be doing 3 sets of 2 double crochet together across the next 6 stitches. I will then be at the increase section of the 6th and 7th waves. So I'll be doing my increase as normal with 2 double crochet into those next 6 stitches. The last wave of this round does fall on the hip area, so we'll be following the original pattern for the waves, where after we start with our increases for the 7th wave, we'll then be skipping a space and placing a double, repeating that for a total of 5 times, skipping that last space, and then to finish off our increase for the 7th wave, we do 2 doubles into each of the next 3 stitches. After completing the last double of the increase, we'll just be pulling our yarn through as we've been doing, chaining 1 and turning our work. The singles will be done exactly the same as before, with 1 single for each stitch. We'll still be changing colors when color changes come up, but otherwise I'll see you at the end of the row. I just finished off that final single crochet on the back of my work, and I slip stitch as I've been doing, chain 1 and turn my work. So you want to repeat those last rounds as many times as necessary for your pants. Honestly, it just helps me to restart the counting for how many rows I have, beginning with the row 1 of the top portion of the pants being the new row of doubles I had done, where the hip sections have the spacing in them still, and the crotch and the middle of the butt area does not have the spacing in those stitches. And when I come from that first row I did like that, I have 11 rows total, and I'm continuously alternating between the row of doubles and the row of singles. So rows 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11, from the way I've been counting now, are all doubles. And then the even rows, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, are the single rows in between those. And because my waist is slightly smaller than my hip area, I will begin decreasing. You don't have to decrease this way. Honestly, I think it'll be okay if you didn't, because you're going to be putting a drawstring in at the end. So you can just continue on if you do not need to decrease. And if you do need to decrease, then continue following along with me. So in my next round of singles, I'll be decreasing by 14 total, by decreasing 2 on each of the waves. And I have 7 waves, so 7 times 2 is 14. And what I'll be doing is, in my first 6 spaces, I'll be placing singles as normal. And once I'm getting toward that middle section where the 5 double crochets are, I'll be doing a 2 single crochet together over those first 2 stitches. I'll be placing a normal single directly into that 3rd stitch right in the middle. And then over the 4th and 5th double, I'll be doing another single crochet 2 together. And that'll be the first decrease section. Now we're approaching the top of the 1st and 2nd wave from this side. So I'll just be doing 12 single crochet across, 1 single crochet being in each stitch. Now that we've placed our 12 singles over that increased section, continue to place singles until you have 2 stitches remaining on the purple side of your pants. Once you have 2 stitches remaining, do 2 single crochet together over those last 2 stitches, and do not close it off yet. Once you have 3 loops remaining on your hook, you then drop the purple yarn, pick up the green by yarning over and pulling through those 3 purple loops. And now you just want to do that 2 single crochet together again on the green side in those first 2 green stitches, and then continue on up the row as normal with 1 single into each stitch until we get to the middle of that 3rd wave. Because the 3rd and 4th wave still have open stitches like the first wave we did has, we'll be following that pattern again. So we'll be placing 1 single into each stitch over the top of the waves. And when we're approaching the bottom portion of the waves, we'll be doing 2 single crochet together, 1 single into the very middle stitch, 2 single crochet together again over those next 2 stitches, and then continue on with singles and repeat over and over until you get to the very end of the round. And once you're approaching the top of that last wave, you'll just be placing one single into each stitch, and then we'll slip stitch as normal, chain one, and turn our work. This next row of double crochet will be slightly different because we did decrease by 14 on our previous round. You start the row as normal with the increase section by doing 2 doubles into the first stitch, 2 doubles into the second stitch, and then 2 doubles into that third stitch. After that, we'll be skipping one space and placing a double. What's different now is that we'll be skipping 2 spaces and then placing our double in the middle. Then we'll be skipping 2 spaces again and placing our double into the third stitch. And after that, we'll skip 1 space, and then we'll be doing our increase section after skipping that 1 space by doing 2 doubles into each of the next 6 stitches across. So this is what it should look like after you've done 2 double crochets into each of those 6 stitches to go over the increase section again. On our second and third waves, we'll be placing 3 double crochet together 3 different times across the bottom portion of those waves. I just completed my first 3 double crochet together of the first wave. I'm doing my second one here across the very middle 3 stitches. And now I'm placing my final 3 double crochet together of this second wave. Now I'll be at my increase section again with 2 double crochet into each stitch across the next 6 stitches. My second and third wave are always made the same way. So when I get to the bottom of my third wave, I'll be doing the same thing by doing 3 double crochet together 3 separate times across those 9 middle stitches. And after that, I'll do my increase as normal with 2 double crochet into each of those 6 stitches. So now as I'm doing the 4th and 5th wave, those will be made the same as the very first wave I made. So now that we finished the increases going into that 4th wave, we'll be skipping 1 space and placing a double, skipping 2 spaces, placing a double directly into the middle stitch, skip 2 more spaces again, place a double into the next stitch, skip 1 space, and then you'll be doing your increase section with 2 double crochets in each of those next 6 stitches. And you repeat that again for the 5th wave. And make sure in between that 4th and 5th wave, you do change colors as we've been doing. You should now have 5 stitches remaining on your green side. And to finish off this side, we'll be doing 3 double crochet together to start. Then, as we're doing our 2 double crochet together next in those last 2 stitches, we will not finish it off with the color green because we're changing colors here. So we'll have 3 loops remaining on our hook in green, and we drop our green yarn and yarn over with the purple and swipe through those 3 loops there. And then on the purple side, we'll be doing 2 double crochet together and then doing 3 double crochet together. Then we do our normal increases with 2 double crochet into each of the next 6 stitches. And the final wave of this round follows the same pattern as the first wave we did on this round, where we skip 1 space, place a double, skip 2 spaces, place the middle double, skip 2 spaces again and place a double. Then after you skip 1 space, we finish off the increases of the round where we do 2 doubles into each of the next 3 stitches. We slip stitch, chain 1, and turn. So this is how my pants are currently fitting. There is still a lot of space in the back, as you can see. So I am going to be decreasing again, but they look great, y'all. So I will be decreasing again by 14 along this row. And I'll begin by making 6 single crochets, 1 into each stitch as normal. And when I get to the middle of this wave, I'll be doing 3 single crochet together across those 3 middle stitches. And after that, I'll be doing 1 single into each stitch as normal until I get close to the middle of the pants where the purple and green change colors. You should now have 2 stitches remaining. In those 2 stitches, you will do 2 single crochet together in purple, but don't complete it because once you have 3 loops remaining on your hook from those 2 single crochet together, you drop your purple yarn over with your green and pull through those 3 loops. Then you do 2 single crochet together in green in those next 2 stitches. And after that, you place 1 single into each stitch over the increase section from the last round. The remaining waves I have will follow the same pattern as the first wave did, where after I finish my singles into each stitch over the increase section, when I get to the very bottom of the wave, I do 3 single crochet together across those 3 stitches. I continue by placing 1 single into each stitch until I get to the next bottom portion of the next wave, where I do 3 single crochet together again. I continue repeating this until I get to the end of the round, where I finish off with 1 single crochet into those last 6 stitches. I slip stitch, chain 1, and turn. Now I'm starting my last row of my doubles. I begin again as normal with 2 doubles into each stitch over the next 3 stitches. Now the bottom portion of our wave is pretty easy now. We will just be skipping 2 stitches, placing 1 double directly into that next stitch, skip 2 stitches again, and after that you'll be beginning your increase section again by placing 2 doubles into each stitch over the next 6 stitches. Then when you get to the second bottom of a wave, you're going to be skipping 2 stitches, placing a double, skipping 2 stitches, and then doing your increase section again. And you'll be repeating that until we get to the front portion of the pants. Don't forget to change colors too, from yellow to green, before reaching the front middle of the pants where the green and purple meet. You should now have 4 stitches remaining in green, and I will do 2 double crochet together twice over those 4 stitches. So in the first 2 stitches, I'll do my first 2 double crochet together. In the last 2 stitches of green, I will begin my 2 double crochet together, and when I have 3 loops remaining on my hook, I will drop my green yarn and yarn over with my purple and pull through those 3 loops. And then on my purple side, I'll be doing the same thing, 2 sets of 2 double crochet together. And now that we're through with that middle front portion of the pants, I repeat my increase section with 2 double crochets into each stitch over the next 6 stitches. Now I'm back at the middle of my last wave, where I do 3 double crochet together, and I finish off that side of increases with 2 double crochet into each stitch over the next 3 stitches, and then I slip stitch, chain 1, and turn my work. Originally I was using the 5.5 millimeter hook in orange, and now I'm going to be using that turquoise color hook, which is a 4.5 millimeter hook. Because there is a drawstring, I don't say you have to go down and change your hook that way. I just did it so it would be just a tad bit more fit at the top, but it still will fall off me without my drawstring, so I don't know if it's that significant here. I'm doing a single crochet in the back loop only kind of ribbing. If you can't see this, I would suggest pulling up a different video that shows that in particular so you can see it better than what I'm doing. But for my pants, all I'm doing is chaining up 5, and you skip the first chain and you start with your second one, and when I do the single crochet that falls at the very top of the 4 chains, I put that particular single crochet under both loops, and then the other 3 single crochets as I'm coming downward are under the back loop only. And then when I get to the bottom of those 4 singles, I place a slip stitch into the stitch right next to where I begin at, and then I slip stitch into the stitch right next to that one, and then I turn my work and I go into the back loop only, which is the loop that is facing away from me once I turn my work. And I go under those back loops for those next 3 single crochets, and then when I get back to the top of my work, I put a single crochet under both loops so that it's just more sturdy at the top. I chain 1, put that next single crochet under both loops, and then as I'm coming down, I go under the back loop only for the remaining 3. I hope that makes sense, but again, if it does not, there are separate YouTube videos that can better explain single crocheting into the back loop only ribbing if you need to see that. So I am more into frame now, so I just wanted to show you what I meant by slip stitching into that very next stitch that was next to where you originally started at, and then you slip stitch once more into the stitch right next to that one. And after that is when you return your work and place your single crochet into those back 3 loops, and the back loop is the loop that's closest to my green yarn at the moment, if you can see that. And where my nail is, that's the loop that's closest to me, so that's the front loop. And your back loop is always furthest away from you. And make sure you skip the slip stitches that you just made at the base of the work, because sometimes they can look similar to an actual stitch. And after that, oh look, I messed up. There you go. And place your singles in those back loops only for those first 3 singles. And then when you get to your 4th one, go under both loops, chain 1, and put that first single crochet under both loops because you're at the top of the work. And then put your single crochets into the back loop only for your last 3. Slip stitch until the next stitch available, and then slip stitch into the next available stitch after that. And I'll be back with you once I'm doing my color change from purple to green. So this is how I do my first color change. Since my last purple stitch is with me ending at the base of my work, I drop that purple yarn in front of me, as you see there. I place my hook into that last purple stitch, but I pull the green through and slip stitch. And so now the last loop ends in purple, and I'm ready to start using my green. So what I'll do next is place my next slip stitch into the first green stitch that's available. And then just continue as normal. I'll turn my work and I'll place a single crochet into those back loops for the first 3 single crochets. For the 4th one, place my hook under both loops, chain 1, and repeat as we've been doing. And I'll show you my second color change, because my second color change happens at the top of the ribbing rather than at the base like this one did. So now I'm getting ready to do my color change from green to yellow, and I'm slip stitching into that final green stitch and turning my work. And of course I'm out of frame, so here we are. Here we go. I'm single crocheting into the back loop of those first 3 stitches there. And I'm starting the 4th one now under both loops so that it's more sturdy. Pull up my yarn for a single. And here's where I drop my yarn, because when we come back down this row will be on the yellow side, so we want to be using our yellow yarn. So after I place my final single without completing it, and I have 2 loops left on my hook, I leave a few inches on the green yarn and I cut it. And I do the same thing for the yellow yarn that is still attached to the item. I leave a few inches and I cut that as well. And now I yarn over and pull the yellow yarn through the last 2 loops of the green single crochet. I chain 1 with the yellow yarn, turn my work, and continue as normal down the rest of that ribbing. And I'll be back to show you how I finish up closing the ribbing. So I place my hook under the front loop of the yellow yarn, which is the loop that's facing toward me, and I put my hook also under the front loop of the purple yarn, and then slip stitch through both those loops. And I repeat this process for the remaining 3 stitches as well. Now after I finish those 4 slip stitches through the front loops of the yellow and of the purple yarn, then I just slip stitch into a yellow space right beneath those 4 stitches, chain 1, and I just pull that thread through and cut the yarn a few inches in. I pull the rest of the yarn out, and I will come back to that tail later on and the rest of my tails to sew that into my work. So this is what the pants look like now. I love them, but if you can see from the way I just pulled them out, there's still a lot of space up there. So I am putting a drawstring in, but otherwise they're all good to go, minus the drawstring and the bottom portion where I will place my 2 ribbings at the end. Next, I'll show you how to do my ribbing at the ankle. I'm just reattaching my yarn in the color purple, and I will be using the same colors that are already there. So once I reach the end of the purple section, I'll be switching over to yellow on the right leg, and for my left leg, the same thing. I'll be reattaching my green yarn, and when the yellow comes into play, I'll switch my color to yellow. So I'm making my slip knot, and I'm starting by making a standing double partially, and I'll have 2 loops left on my hook, and then I'll yarn over again and begin my double crochet into that next stitch. And then when I have 3 loops left on my hook, I'll yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. You do not have to start with the standing double. Instead, you can attach your slip knot to the work and chain up 3, or you can start with a stacked double, the way you've been doing throughout the entire project, I just ended up starting with a standing double. And I put those 2 double crochets together, and I continue to do that all the way around. So for whatever your stitch count is, you should have half of that by the time you finish this round, because every 2 stitches will become 1. So because each side of my leg was 34, I originally had 68 stitches, and after I kept joining 2 together each time, by the end of this round I had 34 stitches remaining. For my color change, when I have 3 loops remaining on my hook for purple, I drop the purple yarn, pick up the yellow yarn, yarn over and pull through those 3 purple loops, and I continue with the same process that I've had by doing 2 double crochet together over all the loops until I get to the very end. Now at the end, as I'm finishing my last double crochet together, I will just do the same slip stitch process I've been doing throughout the entire project, but instead this time, because my first set of 2 doubles together is there, I'll be placing my hook under the top 3 loops rather than the top 2 loops, so that's more secure as I pull my loop from front to back for my working yarn, and then I just turn my work from there. This row is a repeat of the last one, so all I'm doing this time is I'm starting with a stacked double, but I don't finish it because I'll have 2 loops left on my hook when I'm at the end of my stacked double, and then I'll yarn over and start the double right next to it so I can have my partial double there as well. And then I'll have 3 loops left on my hook. I yarn over and pull through those 3 loops, and I'll be doing that 16 more times. Now the color change will be slightly different because the color change will fall in the middle of a 2 double crochet together, and I'll just show you how I do my color change. I start the 2 double crochet as normal by yarning over, inserting my hook, yarning over and pulling up a loop. And with 3 loops on my hook, I drop the yellow yarn and pick up the purple. I yarn over and pull through those first 2 loops. And now my first partial double crochet is completed. And with that purple, I will yarn over and place the second double crochet onto the purple side of the work. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Now yarn over and pull through those first 2 loops. Now yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And now I'm ready to continue on with purple, doing 2 double crochet together for the remainder of the round. Now at the end of the round, I slip stitch and bring that purple from the front to the back of the work. And then I just turn my work. Now I'm letting you know the way I did my ribbing is very tight. I would not recommend somebody do as many rounds that I do from here. I did 5 rounds before doing my finishing round. I would suggest maybe do 2 or 3 rounds instead of 5 before your final round. And if it's for you, every time you make a round, try it on and see if it's easy to get your foot into that hole or not, and then decide whether or not you should continue. I placed 2 chains there to begin with, and then I yarn over, and I begin doing a front post by inserting my hook from the front to the back of the work, going around the 2 double crochet together from the last round, picking up my yarn from the front and bringing it through the back to the front, back to where I originally started. And I have 3 loops on my hook at that point. I yarn over and pull through 2, and then yarn over and pull through 2 again, and that's how you do a front post. I'm showing the front post a bit more slowly here so you can see what I'm doing, as I'll be doing this the entire round. I will continue doing front posts, and I'll show you how I make my color change. And I'm approaching the end of the row, and I start my front post double, and I'm on the last part where I have 2 loops left on my hook, and then I yarn over and pull that yellow loop through instead of the purple loop, and then continue doing the rest of the row in the same way by doing front posts around each set of 2 double crochet together, and I'll see you at the end of the row. Now that I'm finishing the end of my row, I will slip stitch as normal and turn my work, and I'll chain 2 from there. Now, since I'm on the back side of my work, I'll be doing back post double crochet all the way around so that all the posts I make will be showing on the front side of my work when I wear my item. So a back post is made similarly to a front post, but instead you yarn over and then you insert your hook from the back to the front of the work, go around, the front post double crochet from the last row, and then insert your hook from front to back to grab that yarn and yarn over, and you pull that yarn around the front post from the last round. And when you pull your hook up, once you reach the spot that you started in, you now have 3 loops on your hook. You yarn over and pull through those first 2 loops. You yarn over one more time and pull through those final 2 loops, and you've made your first back double crochet or back post double crochet, and you keep doing that all the way around. Now I'm making my last back post double crochet in the color yellow, and when I'm nearly completing this double crochet and I have 2 loops left on my hook, I drop my yellow yarn, pick up the purple and yarn through those 2 yellow loops, and I continue on in the color purple with double crochet back posts. Now at the end of this round, you slip stitch and turn your work. Like I said, I do suggest you try this on if this item is for you at the end of every round, and try it on just to make sure that it's not too tight around your ankle, because you can stop here and it'll look fine. I just want my ribbing to be extended and didn't mind struggling too much for it to look the way that it does for me personally, but it is hard to get in. After the back post round I just did, I kept alternating between front and back post rounds for a total of 3 more times. So after the back post round we just did, I did 1 front post round, 1 back post round, and then 1 more front post round. So this is what my work looks like after completing 7 rounds of front and back posts. Again, my last round is a front post. So now I'll be doing, after chaining 1, I'll be doing 1 single crochet and 1 chain following each single crochet in each stitch. So altogether I'll have 17 single crochets followed by those 17 chain ones that come after each single. To change colors, after I make my last single in yellow, I will pull the purple yarn through the yellow loop that is on my hook to create the chain 1, and the chain 1 will be created in yellow because of the yellow loop being on the hook originally. And then after that, we'll continue as we've been doing, but with purple, placing a single into each stitch and a chain 1 after each of those singles. At the end of the round, we just slip stitch to the end of the round, chain 1, and cut a few inches of yarn and leave it as a tail. Now repeat all the steps of your ankle cuff with the second leg of your pants, making sure that you do the same amount of rows as you did on your other side, and make sure you're using the same hook as well. I've been using my 4.5 millimeter hook, which is the same hook I use for the top ribbing on my pants. Now the last order of business is to make a cord to go around the top ribbing of your pants. I'll put a link in the description box to the cord video that I followed on YouTube, but you can use any cord. It can be just a set of chains, even just something that's going to hold your pants up. At this point, I do not cut my yarn end. I just leave a long loop just in case I do have to add more stitches to this. I don't want to have to reattach my yarn. I'll be pulling the cord through using a really small hook, and I'll show you how I do that. I just pick a hole that's slightly off center on purpose, and I pull the cord from the front to the back of the work. I do that so that ending tail will stick out and I can tie it like a normal drawstring. I leave the last few inches of the drawstring out so I know I will have enough to tie my drawstring. And it doesn't really matter what stitches you choose to go through at the top. You just want to be consistent. So I went through what looks like to me like the second to last single from the top when you're doing the ribbing up and down. That's the single crochet I was trying to go through every time. So you draw the drawstring in and out of the pants. Here I just skipped about 4 stitches, and then I very awkwardly grab that cord through from the back to the front of the work. And whenever I pull the cord from the front to the back, I skip about 2 stitches before I do that. And I just continue to alternate all around the pants. I'll skip 4 spaces as I bring in the yarn or the cord from back to front, and I skip 2 spaces as I bring the cord from front to back. Again, this is not an exact science. You can skip however many stitches you want to, or it doesn't have to be even if you don't want it to be. I just prefer my cord to look consistent as it's coming in and out of the work. If you realize your cord is not long enough, just continue on with whatever chain you were making because your loop is still connected at the other end. And then once you have enough, continue to pull your yarn through. I'm coming to the end of pulling my drawstring through, and I happen to have almost just enough yarn in my cord with my 48 inches or so. And I'm just pulling that cord through to the back of the work one more time. And I want my yarn to tie on the front. So I'm pulling that cord back out, making sure not to pull it through the very center, pulling it just a tad bit off center. And the cords will tie together in the middle when I wear the pants. Once you finish creating your chain, or you realize you have enough of a chain made already, just cut that final end and pull on that loop that's there to make sure that the end is tightly secured. And now you can sew in all your ends, including the 2 ends on your cord, and you are done. I love the design down the side of the legs, and you can be creative with this. I was just talking in my Instagram video here saying how I would have loved that these were flare pants as well. They would have been beautiful that way instead of putting a cuff at the end. I just don't normally do cuffs at the end of my work, so I just wanted to do something different. But overall, I think they're so pretty, and they're perfect for Mardi Gras. And thank you all for tuning in. See you all on my next video.